Poso maoni wiak, waiwanan kitanan ni mua e yoski piataya posnotaman e yum MITW Podcast. A yospis piataya posnapi notaman e ne hisikimaka e yoso matnamin kihi.
Welcome to the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin podcast. We are your hosts, Gary Dodge
and Sheena Mapus. On this episode, we are joined by guest Vaughn Bowles, Public Information Officer from the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin. Welcome, Vaughn.
Hi, guys.
I would like to remind everyone that we request you send in your COVID-19 related questions to us at podcast@mitw.org. How is everyone today?
Fantastic. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Yeah.
So Vaughn, can you talk about what the difference between the flu shot and the COVID-19 vaccine is?
Yeah. So first off, they are vaccines that target two totally different types of viruses, just for starters. Flu vaccination, been around for years, very well understood how it works in the human body. It usually has targets for 3 to 4 different types of flu strains, so they're called either tri or quadrivalent. The flu vaccine is usually about 50 to 60% effective when you get one, just because there's so many different varieties of the flu out in nature. But some studies say that the shot can be as effective as like 85 to 86%, just depending on the year. Usually takes a person about 2 weeks to develop antibodies after they get a flu shot. Typically, adults only need 1 flu shot for those antibodies to be formed, but kids need 2. And then you need 1 every year to, boost that immunity and stuff. Additionally, a flu shot will not protect you from COVID. Just want to throw that out there right now. Just because you get a flu shot doesn't mean you're immune to COVID. So that said, the various COVID vaccines that they're looking into right now are all pending emergency order or emergency use from the FDA. Several of them are using a new technology. A lot of vaccines in the past have been based off what are called attenuated viruses, where it's a deader strain or it's components of a virus. Some of the new COVID vaccines are actually using an mRNA that help your body naturally produce proteins that help prevent COVID from binding to your cells, because you always hear about these little spikes that the virus has. It helps prevent those from attaching to your cells. So that's how several of those work. The front runners right now are said to be 90 to 95% effective at building immunity to COVID-19, so they're pretty effective. Unlike the flu shot, everyone is going to need at least 2 COVID shots right now, partly because we don't have any form of innate immunity to it right now. That's part of the reason you get the 2 shots, and that's why the kids get the 2 shots. They just haven't been exposed to the flu or just about anything, so they get an extra dose to boost their immune response to that. And then the COVID vaccinations aren't out for distribution yet, because they're still pending final review and approval from the FDA, but their plans for distribution within the next 2 weeks from what we've heard. So those are some of the differences right now.
So the mRNA vaccine, are the vaccine that uses mRNA, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that the one that the panel recommended to the FDA yesterday for emergency approval?
Yeah, I believe Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines both use that type of mechanism of action, and they're both being. I think one was. I think Pfizer was reviewed yesterday, and Moderna's up for review on like the 14th or something like that. I don't remember. It was in the news though. But yes, those are the ones they're looking at that utilize that.
So I think we've covered this before, but is the vaccine a one-time thing, or will it be something that people need to get annually like the flu shot?
So it depends. I know you guys wanted me to say that because it's true. But it really does depend. So because of the rush nature of the vaccine, we don't know actually. There's phase 4 trials to vaccines, and what those are is they're long-term observation. And because COVID's so new, and because the vaccines were produced, lightning speed basically, we don't know how long they'll provide immunity to a person. And so we may need to get them every year like a flu shot. They're hoping that it provides immunity for several years at a time, or a decade or so. That's the hope. Whether or not it lasts that long, we don't know yet at this point. So we're all in the same boat, and we're just watching to see if we need to get COVID vaccination every year. So and it also depends on how young the person is, or I should say how old the person is. Either way you want to look at it, because that also dictates how well their immune system can function, and whether or not they need to get one sooner or later. So it may depend on, like our seniors may need to get one on a more regular basis than our children. So there you go.
So obviously there's a lot of discussion around the vaccine right now. Would you recommend getting the first round of COVID-19 vaccine?
All right. For starters, just going to throw that out there. I'm not a doctor. That said, for myself and, the incident command, we're recommending that everyone get vaccinated as soon as they possibly can to protect themselves and their families and the communities. I would encourage people to get vaccinated. Anecdotally, we had some friends that contracted COVID earlier this year. It was April, May-ish, early on. And they were very healthy. They were marathon runners, in great condition, and they are still dealing with damage to their lungs that COVID kind of produced. I mean, it was very difficult for many of them. And so, the vaccine is likely significantly safer than contracting the virus on your own. So we recommend that everyone that has the opportunity to get vaccinated to do so.
So pivoting to testing now, what types of coronavirus tests are there, and can you explain the differences between them?
Yeah. So there are two types of tests just generally for vaccine or viral testing. The first is what's known as a viral test or a diagnostic test, and that tells you if you're currently infected with COVID or the flu or what a various type of virus. What those are looking for is they're looking for what are called molecular antigens or pieces of the virus that are within your bloodstream. These are what the rapid tests are that we have at the tribal clinic. They're looking for those antigens, so they're looking to test to see if you have virus in you right now. They take those viral antigens and they put them through a process called PCR. It basically reproduces it and magnifies it to see whether or not you have virus built into your system or floating through your system. The other type of test is an antibody test or a serological test. That tells you if you've previously had COVID or the flu or another type of virus. Those are looking to see whether or not you have antibodies, obviously, built up in your system. And that means you've had a previous exposure at some point in time. There are actually some really good resources put out by HHS and the CDC. And we can put those links in the show notes if you want to learn more about those.
So, say if you get a negative test, does that mean you're safe to visit your family during the holidays?
Not necessarily. And the reason for that is if you've been exposed, in a relatively short window of time, say, 3 to 4 days, and you get a COVID test, at that point your body actually doesn't have enough virus or viral load to show up on the test. And so you'd get what's known as a false negative, where it says you're clear of the virus even though you have it in your system. So just because you've gotten a test doesn't necessarily mean you don't have it currently. And additionally, there are about 30 to 40% of the cases that are actually asymptomatic. So there are people that could be saying, I feel just fine, I don't need to get a test, and they could spread it still. So just because you have a negative test or don't have symptoms doesn't mean you're not carrying the virus at this time.
So is home testing going to be a thing?
So home testing, and I looked that up too, they're not FDA approved yet. They're looking to get emergency authorization for testing, kind of like the vaccines are right now. So they're building them, but they're not out yet. And there are also questions about the reliability, because for some of those home tests, you have to stick a swab fairly far up your nose. And so they're worried that people might not, get a large enough sample for it to be an accurate test. So it will likely be a thing, but we're not sure how dependable of a thing it will be once it's on the market.
Okay, switching gears here. I know the tribe's been trying to expand the communications up here. Can you speak about the internet service pilot?
There's actually several internet projects and stuff that the tribe is engaging in right now. The pilot that you're talking about is one with a group called Starlink. It's actually a project that SpaceX is putting on right now. They are working to provide internet, space-based internet with low orbital satellites. I actually looked it up. It's a super cool new technology. They're a type of microsatellite, essentially, that can be stacked and they can be deployed in a network over a specific area. So SpaceX actually contacted the tribe, and they said your citizens living in the Zor and Neopit area along like Highway 47 and Pontiff Road are in an area that might be ideal for us to test this. And so they're going to allow us to have 50 participants in this trial, but you have to live in that specific geographic region. And so they're going to test out their new technology and try to get internet to these individuals to answer two major questions. Right now, satellite-based internet is affected by two major things, and it's weather patterns, specifically, rainfall and things like that, but also foliage and like canopy cover for trees. And so they're hoping that their new system will be able to provide, a high-speed connection that is, much more reliable than the current competitors on the market for that. The pilot's going to be a 12-month program. They'll provide you with, the materials you need essentially to hook up to the internet, and then afterwards you'll basically be signed up for internet with them. So that's the Starlink project. Charter is also expanding some of the fiber optic cables. Some of the expansions that they're working on now is West Branch, that's just finished. There is a project south of 55 that has about 75% of the cable pulled through already. The Bass Lake region is about 70% done, and they're also looking to do some work around the fairgrounds and Kashina Falls. And I think the notes that I got on that said that part of the project is pretty close to completed. And then the last part is the cell tower project that the tribe's been looking at. And that is with the group Bug Tussle Wireless. We've started, or we're going to start with the towers at Rush Lake and looks like County M East. And there are going to be two towers there that are going to provide service through Bug Tussle and FirstNet. Right now we're just running out a lot of electrical cable to where some of these towers are going to be. The materials are on their way or being stored at community development right now. So that's moving forward. And there's a little bit of final paperwork that needs to be approved by the federal government. And that should be done in February. So everything's moving forward a little slower than I would like because, who doesn't want fast internet right now? But there are a lot of options and a lot of projects the tribes moving forward to make sure that everyone can have reliable internet, especially, if you're, teleworking right now or doing, distance learning school and stuff. So they're working on making sure everyone can connect.
Okay, and then so back to the Starlink. Is that for anyone who lives in the area or only those who need assistance?
From what I understand, it's for anyone that lives in the area. So there isn't any sort of financial barrier or bars you need to cross. If you're in that geographic area, that's what they're really trying to test for.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'd just like to thank the community, for the help that they've provided in slowing down the spread of COVID. I know it's been a long haul. You're all tired of hearing about wearing masks and washing your hands and, staying socially distanced, but it's really been helpful and really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Waiwanan for listening to the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also listen to the podcast on menominee-nsn.gov under the Community tab. Keep up to date by following us on Facebook at MITW Podcast. We do weekly updates with Vaughn and welcome any community questions you have regarding COVID-19. Please send them in to us via email at podcast@mitw.org.